In this video, we're going to be looking at solving two-step linear equations. Once again, we're going to be using our two methods of solving. We're going to be looking at backtracking using a flowchart, and then we're going to be doing the same thing using inverse operations. We have two equations here that we want to solve. 5x plus 7 is equal to 42, and 4 times a minus 3 is equal to 28. Now, when you are dealing with these equations, the first thing that you have to be careful about is what operations are being performed on our input number and in what order. If we look at our first equation here, we will see that the first thing that is happening to our input number x is we are timesing by 5. And then we are adding 7, which means that when we complete our flow chart, the first thing we're going to say here is times 5 and then plus 7. That means when we are backtracking and using our inverse operations, we are going to minus 7 and then divided by 5. Remember, our input number x goes into the first box and our answer 42 goes into the final box. Now, let's backtrack. 42 minus 7 gives me 35. 35 divided by 5 gives me 7. So x is equal to 7. Let's do the same thing now using inverse operations. Now remember, the first thing that we did over here was minus 7. So that's what we need to do to both sides of our equation now. We need to minus 7. So we're going to be looking at 5x plus 7, and then we're going to minus 7. And that's equal to 42 minus 7. Remember, whatever we do to one side of the equals, we must also do to the other. Now, this plus 7 and minus 7 will cancel out. Positive 7 minus 7 gives you 0. So now we have 5x is equal to 42 minus 7 is 35. Now the second thing we did to undo our equation was divide by 5. So that's what we're going to do to both sides of our equation now. We're going to divide both sides by 5. Times 5 and divided by 5 cancel out, so we've ended up with x is equal to 35 divided by 5, which is 7. Okay, so now let's look at our second equation that we've got over here. 4 times a minus 3 is equal to 28. Now, the first thing that is happening to our unknown number is inside the bracket we are minusing 3, and then outside the bracket this 4 means times by 4. So on our flow chart we're going to have minus 3 and then we're going to have times by 4. Okay, that means when we backtrack we're going to do the opposite of multiply by 4, which is divide by 4, and then the opposite of minus 3, which is plus 3. And our unknown number a goes in the first box and our answer 28 goes here. So let's now backtrack. 28 divided by 4 is 7. 7 plus 3 gives us 10. So a is equal to 10. Let's do the same thing over here using inverse operations. Now, on our flowchart, the first thing that we did to undo the equation was divide by 4. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to divide both sides of my equation by 4. When I do that, this times 4 and this divided by 4 cancel out. and we are left with a minus 3 is equal to 28 divided by 4, which is 7. Now, the next thing that we did was to add 3. So now that's what we're going to do to both sides. A minus 3 plus 3 is equal to 7 plus 3. Now, this minus 3 and this plus 3 cancels out, and we're left with A is equal to 7 plus 3, which is 10. The same answer as we had with our backtracking. Okay, we have a final two equations now that we'll quickly go through. Let's look at this first one. X over 2 minus 1 is equal to 4. Now, the first thing that is happening to our input number x here is we are dividing by 2. So we're going to put divided by 2 here, and then we are subtracting 1. So when we use our inverse operations, we are going to add 1 to undo minus 1, and we're going to times by 2 to undo divided by 2. Remember, our unknown number x goes into the first box, and our answer is 4 in the last box. Now let's backtrack. 4 plus 1 gives us 5. 5 times 2 gives us 10. Now let's do the same thing using our inverse operations. So if we go back to our flowchart, we will see that the first thing that we did over here to undo our equation was to add 1. So that's what we're going to do to our equation over here. We're going to add 1 to both sides of the equation. So we have x over 2 minus 1 plus 1 is equal to 4 plus 1. Now, minus 1 and plus 1 will cancel out. So we are left with x over 2 is equal to 4 plus 1, which is 5. Now, the next thing that we did to undo the equation was to times by 2. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to times both sides of the equation by 2. Now, divided by 2 and times 2 cancel out, and we are left with x is equal to 5 times 2, which is equal to 10. The same answer as we got using our flowchart. Now, let's look at our last equation. If we look at the equation, we can see that the first thing that happens to our input number is that we add 3, and then we divide by 9. So when we are working backwards to undo the equation, we need to multiply by 9 first and then minus 3. Remember, our unknown value x goes into the first box and our answer is 2. Now we can backtrack. 2 times 9 gives us 18. 18 minus 3 gives us 15. So x is equal to 15. Now let's do the same thing using our inverse operations. Now the first thing that we did here to undo our equation was to multiply by 9. So that's what we're going to do to both sides of the equation now. We're going to make sure that we multiply both sides of the equation by 9. So we have times 9 to both sides. Now, divided by 9 and times 9 cancels out. So we are left with x plus 3 is equal to 18, 2 times 9. The second thing we did was to minus 3. So we're going to do that to both sides. So we have x plus 3 minus 3 is equal to 18 minus 3. Plus 3 and minus 3 cancel out, so we are left with x is equal to 18 minus 3, which is 15. I hope this helps you in understanding how to solve two-step equations.